is not something I truly enjoy. You know, I'm the type that I just want to have my people and they know what they need to do. Putting yourself out there, even if you don't really, it's not what you love to do. And especially being filmed, it's not my favorite. Hey everybody, welcome back to the FIP Printing Pros Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Steinson, again with my fellow co-host, Chris Lockwood. Today, what we're going to be talking about is different struggles that we face as business owners and basically how we overcome them. I've already talked about my own personal struggles between life, business, and just, I guess, natural things that happen in our culture that we have to kind of adapt with. So we kind of want to hit a little bit on that today, and that's going to be the main focus of our podcast today.
Yeah, let's get into it, man. Talking about struggles in business, I think this is anybody who owns or works in business is going to be able to relate to. And what's going to be interesting is just to find out how you dealt with a lot of stuff and what you did to overcome it. And then, the struggles we're going through right now too. There's growing pains we can get into. So, in the past, going probably back to COVID, that's kind of the big one that everybody had to deal with. What specifically in the print industry did your big struggles during the COVID time?
So, obviously, I think everybody was facing the same issue for the most part is just, not everywhere. But for a little bit, for at least a couple weeks to a month or so, everything was just completely shut down. Everybody was just hunkering down in their home, things like that, which, got people out there spending money, got people that are, all events were shut down. So specifically for our industry, we're very event based. So, not having anybody that's buying promotional items to hand out at an event and or flyers for different events, different things like that. So that was specifically, a struggle during the COVID times that I had personally dealt with. And I know I touched on it a little bit during the last two podcasts when I was kind of talking about my background and things like that. But I don't know if I actually verbally said it or not. But we actually, with my Nebraska business that I had before I got this business, FIP Printing, we got to the point because of COVID where I was literally on the brink of bankruptcy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And kind of how I described it was I got to the point where I just started paying myself as a business owner because we were doing so well. And we were about to take really big leaps and strides to the next level. Then COVID hit and then everything shut down. We weren't really getting any orders coming in. And if we were, they were very minimal. So that put us in a bad position where thankfully before I started even paying myself, I made sure I had a good nest egg in the company that we could kind of withstand some hits. Didn't expect a COVID hit. I thought maybe slow month or two here and there, not an entire year. Things just happen and you just got to roll with the punches. But that's how it works.
You were talking about almost having to go bankrupt. You had set aside money. You hadn't prepared for COVID. So let me ask you this, and this is more specific to the print industry. During that time, a lot of things went digital. Meetings went digital. People were working from home. You couldn't gather. You couldn't do anything, business cards. I think there were 3 or 4 new business card apps that came out. So you didn't have printed business cards, kind of went away for a while. How did that affect what you're doing? And have you seen a switch to where now people want those printed materials again, and it's not just the digital and advertising and all that? People want that. Have you seen that coming back? So kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So basically, what I talked about a little bit on our first podcast when we were talking about the physical marketing and things like that, where when COVID happened, one thing I didn't talk about was the seismic shift kind of in that direction was people started, honestly, it made a lot of business owners and marketing people and things like that have more time on their hands to really rethink things. And people started to really shift and adjust. And for good ways, in a lot of ways, a lot of businesses had more downtime to really start to plan and and really dig deep into things that they really haven't had time to do. But a lot of people started shifting to the digital. And even for our business now, the First Impressions printing, company I have now, on the actual like flyers, brochures, booklets, and things like that. A lot of people used to go longer runs, higher quantities, because they knew they would have tons of events coming up and have a handout. But this, I think, made him think now that you never know what could come up. So I'm going to order shorter runs.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
So, which for our industry, we have big digital presses and then we have big offset presses. And for those of you that don't understand the differences, on the digital side, for my standpoint, you as the end user wouldn't even probably realize, but digital is usually for your shorter runs, and because each time that something goes through that machine, it has a certain dollar amount that it has to cover ink, maintenance, all the things that has to be covered. Whereas if we go offset, which is your longer runs, that is going to be basically, it's old metal machines, so you don't really have as much maintenance, not much wear and tear.
So hold on. When you say digital, you're talking about like a oversized Canon printer, right? So it's basically like your desktop printer, but it's like
on steroids.
10 times the size, right?
Yeah.
And then offset, I think what makes me like, okay, now I know what it looks like. When you think about the old videos of like the newspaper being printed on that big machine, that's your offset printer.
Yes, 100%.
Okay,
yeah. That's the visual basically there. So with that in mind, before my company that I have now, when I first bought it, I came into it in the middle of COVID. We only had one digital machine and, several offset machines in the back. Well, since then I've had to now update it to now the newer style, because most of the stuff are more short run and now a lot less quantity at a time. So I now have 5 digital machines that I have had to upgrade because the shift in the market with that. And so, and that's the biggest thing as a business owner too, is, you have to really shift and adapt and move with the times. And if you can see it ahead of time coming, that's always like the best. Even right now, what we're trying to do is get online e-commerce, which that's been around for a while, don't get me wrong, but for our industry, it is not as common.
Yeah.
You have the big players, and your Vistaprints and things like that are out there that, they're the big dogs and everything like that, over $1 billion a year that they sell. But that's kind of and we're talking about struggles. I would say most businesses have those online competitors that are just ginormous, that they have to deal with,
So how do you, as a small business, how do you compete with? Well, let me say this. So I've had to have things printed and I've had to get promotional items before. As a consumer, like that is very intimidating.
Yeah.
Because there's so many choices.
Yes.
And when I was looking at it, like when I was still in the Army, I had to get some things done. And it was overwhelming to try and figure out, how do I get these shirts made, or where do I get this, this thing printed out, or where does this come from? Where do I get these banners or these signs? When you're dealing with the online, right, where a lot of times it is going to be cheaper because they're a giant company, they can afford to really cut costs. How do you, as a small business owner, as a small business, really compete with these bigger guys? What do you do to compete with them?
So we've internally had a lot of these discussions on basically how you really navigate that, because that is extremely important, is to find your differentiator, and how you can separate yourself from your competition. Mm-hmm. And obviously the big online people, that the big companies out there is the main competition that we really deal with the most. And really for us, what I found is basically, we get people that go to Vistaprint and get an item done. Say for instance, it was one that just happened was it was a sign, and how the printer ended up doing it, the actual layers was peeling off, and one, they didn't have time to probably go back on and get it ordered, get it shipped here and do all that. But two, just the customer service nightmare of getting a hold of them from what they were saying was just extremely difficult.
Yeah.
And so two things there just in that particular situation. One, you know, we're pretty flexible on if we need to try to rotate production around to make it work to get that particular thing done that they need it on the time they need it, if possible. Not always possible, but as much as we can help it, we always try to do that. Two, customer service wise, we don't have no automated answering machines or anything like that. When you call us, it goes straight to one of our people. And all of us would, there may be a little bit of time we have to okay, let me figure this out. I'll call you back type of thing. But, we can figure it out pretty quickly and then get back to them and handle that kind of stuff. So customer service is very there. And then plus, obviously, we're a smaller company. So I'm very heavily involved in my business. I'm a very hands-on owner. So if there's any issues of any kind, like somebody will pull me into it and I can literally address it right away and make sure to make quick decisions if need be.
Yeah.
But I would say also the biggest differentiator, and I would imagine this is probably similar for a lot of businesses too, not just ours. But what I try to do differently is, there's going to be the people that want to just go online, order, be done. But there's, like you said, there's some of the people that said that can be daunting. It could be a lot of information. There's tons of options out there. So what I try to tell people is, if you need our help, give us at least a time frame when you're trying to get this done, a theme of what the event is going to be like, that you want to stick around if you have any particular ideas of what you want, and then we can put together a whole proposal and send you some options. But if you give me a budget, quantity, and all that kind of stuff, basically all that information, I can build out some options for you, and then you can choose out of those options what you would like. So it's kind of a nice customer service thing that you won't get from online or maybe even other local printers, or whatever your industry is. That's kind of my way of trying to be my differentiator. And then also, we're a veteran-owned business. So a lot of people want to work with veteran-owned business. There's women-owned businesses. There's different minority-owned, different things like that. That some people that matters to them. Where you separate yourself from those as well, as long as you're, making it known and being visual, like I'm doing right now, doing these podcasts too, is good. I've said I don't really enjoy being the face. Like it's not my personality by any means. Don't get me wrong. I can be the person that in that moment, but actually, I'm like when you come to different, what do you call it? Extrovert and introverts.
Right.
I'm a rare combination where I can come off in a certain setting like I'm the introvert or extrovert because I have that personality that can come to life and have fun, but it takes a lot out of me. So technically, on the terms of explanation, that means I'm an introvert because it takes away from me and not when I'm actually. So for extroverts, they actually get more life out of that. So doing things like this to differentiate yourself, and putting yourself out there, even if you don't really, it's not what you love to do. And especially being filmed, it's not my favorite. But
you just have to ignore the camera. Tim is not there. Yeah. All 8 of them that are around us right now.
But you got to do, especially as a business owner, you have to be willing to do the things that aren't always comfortable. Whatever those different things are. Even another issue in business that you face, and this is in every business you're going to have, when you have employees, there's going to be issues, there's going to be employee issues. I don't enjoy having those conversations with my employees, if I have to correct a behavior or anything like that. That is not something I truly enjoy. I'm the type that I just want to have my people and they know what they need to do and just do the work. I don't want there to be arguments within each other's or anything like that, different issues that you have from, having employees. And, but as the leader, you have to have those conversations. I don't enjoy them, but those are the things you have to do. And I think that's a big thing that we have to face as business owners, is having those uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah, and it goes just beyond the employees as well. I was thinking when you mentioned the good customer service and all that kind of stuff, that the whole adage that the customer's always right, that's such bullshit. They're not always right. They're wrong. They're people just like we are. Sometimes we're wrong, sometimes they're wrong. So you have to be able to have those conversations with the customer. It's like, if they're unhappy with the results of the job, well, then you got to go back and say, well, this is what you asked for, in our case with the printing, this is the artwork that you provided.
Yeah.
You approved the layout, it's printed or it's done the way you wanted it done. And now you're not happy with it. That's not our fault. That's, you either should have been more clear. You should have asked for changes, whatever. So I think that's another advantage that as a small business that we have is, if it's a Vistaprint, for example, if they do something wrong, they're not going to go back and redo it.
No,
it's done. Like you're okay. You weren't happy with it. Thanks for calling. Here's 10% off your next order, but we're not going to redo it. Whereas if we do something and they're not happy with it, it's important to keep that relationship in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Now, if it was a $50 job and they're complaining about it and that's the only thing they're ever going to order, probably just worth it just to redo it and get them out of there. But if there's someone that constantly, is spending money, you want to make them happy, but you also don't want them to expect, right? So like if you're a plumber, right, and you go and you do a job and you fix a leak in the bathroom, but all of a sudden the kitchen's leaking, well, that's a whole separate job, but you also want to maintain that relationship.
Yeah.
And so you provide that superior customer service. I'm not saying do it for free, but be quick, be on time, be thorough. Those are the kind of things that people look for. So
yeah, I would say on that topic is, for the most part, I make sure my team pulls me in if there's ever an issue, because unfortunately every business, you're going to have things that happen and you just have to figure out how we need to go about fixing it. And what is a common mistake that happens in our industry is there's a big long flyer with a lot of information that gets put on it that we put in the design, but they're providing the information. And one that just happened not too long ago was they provided the wrong phone number. So again, wasn't our fault ultimately, but this was a very good client. So then you have to weigh basically, all right, now, technically, yes, there was some fault here, but could we have maybe did a little, there's can't remember the full details, but there was something in there that maybe we could have actually clarified or something like a little better. I made it so I basically went to them and said, hey, you approved this, totally understand, it probably, there was a lot of information for you to look over. I can understand how it could be missed or anything like that. So, and then whatever our part was, I can't remember, there was something we could have did better. I said, could you meet me halfway? Could we redo this for, XYZ cost, or I don't know.
At least cover the cost of material.
Whatever it was, basically, I kind of say, hey, I get it. We both kind of could have done better to make this happen. Could you meet me? And a lot of times I'm dealing with a lot of the business owners. Some of these are, your marketing directors, and you have to they have to go talk to their people, to, their boss, to make sure that it's okay. But you have to really weigh the overall thing in those situations is, if you want to spend the money, is it worth it? Because long term, plus also reputation and the, for your company, there's a lot of things you really have to factor in, and every company deals with this, whatever that situation is. Every industry is different. Like you said, plumbers, maybe they forgot to tighten a screw fully capacity, and then it caused a leak or something, that now they got to come back. Now there's that other piece that was right underneath where the leak was happening.
Now there's water damage.
So there's always different things in every industry in that same realm that you really have to kind of figure out and outweigh, reputation, keeping the customer happy, and how much money are you going to lose in the situation. So there's a whole, and each one is individualized. But that is another big struggle. It's a good point to bring up.
Yeah, you had mentioned we were having a talk a while back, and going back to the COVID and things to deal with. There was another massive problem that you had to deal with during that time. I'd like to get into a little bit, and that's the supply chain. When we had all them ships that were sitting off the coast that couldn't
Yep.
come in, how as a printer, as a or promotional items or whatever, if you can't get product, like how did y'all deal with that? And what have been the residual effects? Are you still dealing with anything from that?
So that did, and thankfully, it wasn't just our industry that was affected. So that made it so much easier to go to our customers and explain what our struggle
Yeah.
was. So for like, say for instance, promotional products, our apparels, like all of our wholesalers we get these products from, they weren't getting it from their people because they weren't they were all sitting offshore or
Mhm.
whatever the case may be. So people would order specific items on the promo or apparel side, and we're like, I'm sorry, they don't have that color or whatever. So then it either have to adapt to find a different color, and or switch up it just to a total different item. And so there was a lot of more like a logistics, a lot more hand holding, a lot more going back and forth in the client than we normally ever had to deal with on that end with
Mhm.
apparel and promotional. Then you go to the printed side, or paper. You never think paper would be so hard to get a hold of. And one of the mistakes, and honestly, this was so early on in me taking ownership. I still would have made the same mistake because honestly, I was still learning the industry. But we only had one paper supplier. We didn't have like a multifaceted supplier chain that we
Yeah.
were grabbing from different locations. And when this happened, they locked down all of their only their customer base could get paper from them, and they were only getting certain allocations from their mills that they were getting paper in. So I couldn't even go to another paper mill or anything like that and like, hey, can I get this paper from you because you have it, mine doesn't. No, they wouldn't. Nobody was
Because they were only
accepting
sending it to their
only to their
customers. Oh, so and
customers.
then they were rationing in it.
And then they're, yep,
Mm.
exactly. So what I was basically having to do was I had to buy, when finally a big shipment would come in on some of my more popular stuff, I had to buy like 10 to 12 skids at a time, which on average we just order a skid or two at a time because we can get it next day or within a couple days. So it's not a big deal. We kind of keep a good stock. So we keep our inventory low, so less money out there in inventory. But at that point I had to take what I could get. So
Yeah.
literally, oh, you got 10 skids of that? I'll take it. And
Because you don't know when you're going to get it
you
again.
don't know where you're going to get the next type of, because you don't know what, like literally it was that bad. Like it was just, like normally we have probably, I would say 10 to 15 different types of paper types. And actually it might be more than that. It's probably more than that. But we probably were only getting like 2 to 3 that were our consistent ones on a consistent basis. Whereas the rest of them, we were just pulling what we could get. And so I had to call mainly our big clients. I didn't want to lose them in the process. So I called up all of our big clients and had conversations with them and said, hey, I know normally you love this to be on this particular stock, but right now with supply chain issues, it is very difficult to get that. Are you going to be okay if I go with XYZ? And they're like, just give me whatever you think is best. We'll work with it. I'm so thankful that our clients were understanding. And like I said, it's because they were dealing with supply chain issues just as much as we were in their own different industry, whatever that looked like for them. So they totally understood. Plus it was very out in the public of the different struggles in that. So again, mostly it was my communication. Well, first of all, just adapting and trying to like, okay, now we're gonna just grab what we can. Now I gotta go talk to the customer. Okay, I grabbed this, what I could get. Are you okay if I use that instead of what we normally do? So it's a lot of communication, but it took me off my focus of what I really needed to do for the business. That became almost like a full-time job for me, trying to figure out how I get paper into our company.
Yeah. And you had to take on a lot of risk too. Like you had to hold on to a lot of stock. So that's a lot of money in inventory that's not allocated. And if the paper's not going out, if it's not being printed on, that's just money that's sitting there. So, and you can't, there's nothing you can do with it.
Yeah.
So how did you reconcile, or how did you, come to that decision that, hey, we're going to take this financial risk, hope that people will, because not only do you can't get the stock, or you get it when you can, but that's also the same time when people weren't printing as much.
Yeah.
And so it's like, how did you figure out the balance, or did you just say, to hell with it, we're just going to do what we can?
Supply chain issues actually is what gave me my next idea of what I'm doing with the business right now is I started a wholesale division because I couldn't get as much paper as I wanted. So I have monthly orders, that are large orders, from some of my bigger clients that are always consistently coming through. So what I tried to do is I tried to see, can I just go to a wholesaler for the time being until supply chain issues fix up and outsource these larger orders with these wholesalers, because that depletes a lot of my stock that I can get in by just those main orders I do monthly. And in that process, I realized, holy crap, these wholesalers are more expensive than what I'm charging my customers. They're supposed to be wholesale price so I can put a markup on it and sell it retail. I'm selling to my retailers less than the wholesalers trying to charge me.
Oh, wow.
So that made me think, one, I'm either charging way too low or here's another business venture that I have that I can start up and really not change up anything. I mean, I'm not having to get new machines. I have the machine. I have the people. I have the knowledge. It's nothing different. I'm just it's a different clientele. I'm going to smaller printers who don't have the printers in-house that they can print. And so in that process, I created my wholesale division, which is Patriot Line. Mm-hmm. Now it took me a while to really get to the point where I've really built it and grown and starting to really put it out there. We still haven't even fully marketed it yet as much as we want to this year. All the things we're doing with our CRM program, email campaigns, all the things we're doing that. But at that time, it made me realize that was what I was adapting and trying to do, is go to wholesalers, and I couldn't do it. So again, as a business owner, that's always the thing that you always have to keep in mind too, is, you always got to be kind of thinking the different ways you can grow your business constantly. Like, add as many layers to it as you can. And this is not changing anything. I'm not having to hire new people, do a whole thing. The only thing I'm going to have to do, I do have a website for it now. I need to make it better. So spending a little money on the website is really the only thing I'm having to do with that. Other than that, we really, haven't had to do anything much other than that. Some education within the department, because we have like tickets that they take around, and there's certain color that we have, and we got different color tickets for the wholesale so that we know, because there's shipping involved. You blind ship them because you're shipping as if you're the other company, so the end user doesn't even realize that there's a wholesaler involved. So there's some little bit of logistical, but it's very minor.
But you said something I think is key, right? And that's you didn't step outside of what the normal business is. You added another layer to it.
Yeah.
And I think where a lot of businesses make a mistake, especially if they're struggling, like either with supply chain issues or their customer base is shifting, or they're looking to make more money. They try and add something that's completely different than what the rest of the business is. And, like if you're an electrician, you do, depending on, let's just say you're a residential electrician and you do, you come in and you do hookups for new houses or whatever, you run your electrical. Like, you don't want to add a TV installation division to your company, because yes, it's dealing with electrical, but it's so different than what you're doing. It's not a layer on top of that. It's something different. And then now you're getting pulled in two different directions. But you could create a layer to where you're actually supplying the electrical equipment, the wires and the outlets and the panel boxes and all that. So that's another layer. Same thing with the printing. You just added a layer to it. It's not something completely different. You didn't go out there and say, I'm going to start making vehicle wraps or tinting windows.
Yeah.
Or something like that, things that are adjacent to the printing industry, but not in line with what you're already doing. So I think, a lot of people, if you didn't hear that, rewind this and listen to this part again. If you're going to expand your business, make sure it's a layer on top of what you're already doing and not something completely different.
And diversification, that's all I'm trying to do. And that was what got me into trouble with my Nebraska business when I originally had it, because we were only promotional and apparel. And when COVID hit, that's when the events went away and promotional apparel wasn't getting purchased. And that's when I realized print was still viable, signs and things like that were still kind of viable out there. I needed to get into that. And it's all in my same realm. It's not learning anything that crazy, that much different. It's pretty much in the same realm. Different products, don't get me wrong, but knowledge base and understanding of how each works really coincides with each other. And so that's why now I've gotten so many layers where now I've got print, promotional apparel, signs, banners, and mailing services, because it all connects. And then now I started the wholesale division of that. So all that is just a different customer base that I'm now opening up. And the reason why I also like the wholesale side of it. So for anybody that has a business that can do the similar thing that I'm doing, is on the retail side, if I get one customer, I get the one customer. On the wholesale side, if I get one customer, I get all of their customer base. So while I have to take less margins so that they can put their markup on it and everything like that, what I get out of it is basically a sales team working for me, and they just send me the orders. And that to me is huge, because you think about it, if you just have a sales team on the retail side and you're out there selling, you have to pay them a salary, commission, whatever your model is, how you take care of your salespeople. This is basically just with me discounting it down so they can put their markup on it. It's basically the same thing, in the long run, as far as,
now it's a numbers game. Now it's volume.
Yeah.
Instead of volume on a grand scale.
Yes.
Instead of just, like you said, the one customer, the one order. Now you're talking, the more volume I can do, the bigger, the better it's going to do. So,
and the other biggest tip I would give as a business owner, now, obviously each industry is slightly different on how you would approach this, but in my industry, I look at it as a partnership in the end, that I want to make sure, my end user is happy in the end. I'm not looking to just, oh, here's a job done. All right, peace. Give me the money and be done. No, it's at the end, I want to make sure it's looked at that we're working together as the end goal to be happy at the end, and that's the biggest thing that I can say, is you want to have that mentality that, and you'll go longer in that kind of mentality. Going back to what you were saying, as far as, when something happens wrong and you got to make up for it and fix it or whatever, sometimes that means you got to eat some money, to fix the issue, just to make them happy at the end, but that's the type of decisions you have to make as a business owner.
Yeah. And that goes a long way, if it's, what's that saying? It's cheaper to keep a current customer than it is to advertise to get new one. Like the cost is vastly different. So, I can spend $50 to redo this order and make it right, or I can spend, $500 to get a new customer.
Yep.
And, the $50 is going to win out every time. So, all right, let me ask you this. We're 5 years post-COVID, almost, when we're recording this, almost to the day. A couple of weeks from now will be 5 years post-COVID.
Yep.
How do you see the print industry, and where do you see it, over the next, assuming there's not another pandemic or something crazy like that, which, even if there is, I think people are smart enough to go, yeah, we're not shutting down the world again. So, but where do you see the print industry? What does the health look like? And, what are, you think the next challenges are going to be?
So I think that, again, we touched on this on the first episode where, people are so digitally saturated right now that it's kind of going back to the bell-bottom jeans, back to the, where people want to have that physical marketing to have in their hand. But also what really reminded me, because obviously, there's always a little scare as a business owner when you see business go down a little bit from like COVID and things like that when that all happened. But then we went to an event once a year. It's the big printing event that everybody goes to, where you see all the different vendors and machines that are being made and all that kind of stuff. And you realize, wow, print is nowhere near close to being dead. Yeah. Like there's so much innovation and new technology, new specialties, and everything that's coming out. I see like a lot more of more of the specialty items coming out. A lot more people are interested in like the soft touch, which feels like more like a velvet. You got raised UV, foils, like all the different specialties. Even like I just had a request today. It's a booklet, but it like you basically die cut the first page small, then the next one's a little bigger, then the next one's a little bigger, and the next one's a little bigger, and it's basically like tab pages.
Oh yeah.
And different things that make yourself unique out there. I'm starting to see more of that kind of stuff. People want to stand out. They don't want to just hand out a flyer or, people still do, don't get me wrong. It's the cheapest way to do things. But some of those people want to get that difference maker that really makes you stand out and kind of hit differently in the brain for people. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you why I think print industry is not dead and it's going to be doing good for years to come. My 15-year-old reads books, a lot of books, yep. And books are expensive. And I'm like, we can get this for like $3 on the tablet or whatever. And she's like, no, I want to hold the book in my hand. And I think because of the oversaturation of digital, people want that physical thing in their hand.
Yeah.
To read the book, to hold the business card, like you said, the soft touch business card, the metal business cards. Like I think people want that more and more because they're kind of tired of the digital, like everything being digital. And it's so easy, if someone gives me their number and I got to look it up on my phone, I got like 500 contacts in here.
Yep.
I have no idea.
Yep.
Who's who. But when I have the business card, I can be like, I remember because I remember the card or I write something on the back or whatever. So I think the print industry is alive and well, man. I think we're going to be doing good for years to come.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I agree with that. I think that's a good point to kind of wrap up right there. Obviously we didn't get on every business struggle that you're going to have to face in business. There's multitudes and different layers. The biggest thing is learning how to try to adapt in every situation. I would say some of the best business decisions I've ever ended up making for the company is when my back is against the wall. And you, in that moment, you as a business owner have to decide, are you going to give up? Are you going to quit? Are you just going to let your business fall apart? Or are you going to stand up and say, no, I'm not going to let this happen. I'm going to do whatever I got to do to make it not fail. And then what are the steps I have to take to make it not fail? And I would say that's ultimately what really has got me to the point where I'm at with the business is honestly, where I've taken the company is because my back got thrown up against the wall and forced me to make changes and or I will lose different things. So that's the biggest thing I would have to say. Yeah, I think that's a good spot. We could wrap it up. And before I end, what I want to put out there is I'm looking for different veteran business owners that are out there that would be interested in being interviewed and come on the podcast as a guest. Just let me know whether it's through the comments or you can call me at First Impressions Printing or however easiest way you want to do it. Just get a hold of me and I'll try to see if we can get you on the schedule and set it up. But until next time, let's keep growing together.
It's time to step up, yeah, it's grind time, no more letting up, no, running faster, further, no more running up, yeah, giving my all, no more giving up, listen to me, stand.